Hey guys, Veebat here with another V-Plays looking at part 3 of our Beginner's Guide series. And in this episode, we're actually going to be taking a look at aircraft types. And in this one, we're looking specifically at heavy fighters. I'm going to use my P-38J as a prime example of how I like to use my heavy fighters. This is the first aircraft type that I really started to click with when it came to the game. I enjoyed the fact that their speed allowed them to kind of dictate what engagements they got into, as well as being able to cause a lot of damage with their very heavy guns, and that's what they're very much known for, but not so much on maneuverability. There are only 3 heavy lines currently in the game. You have the American heavy line, the Germans, and the Brits. Each one varies slightly between each, but the overall characteristics are going to remain the same. Use your altitude and your speed in order to control what fights you get into, and then when you decide to pounce, you're going to do a boom and zoom tactic. I say it in that order because after you commence your attack run, which should not involve a lot of turning because you want to maintain your airspeed, you are then going to leave the area accelerating from the battlefield, hopefully gaining your altitude back. This will allow you to then come back and re-engage those targets. By doing this type of a tactic, you'll find that you have a much greater success than if you get roped into trying to dogfight with this aircraft. The game starts you out in light fighters and multi-roles, and eventually you get the option to go into heavies, and it's a bit of a transition for a lot of players to try and get into that. The very beginning of the battle, we are going straight for altitude. Altitude equals power storage. Essentially, the higher you are, the more you have to fall, which means the more acceleration you get. That brings me to an equipment choice. One of the equipment choices I always advocate for every heavy aircraft is going to be aircraft polish. Aircraft polish, for any aircraft that can equip it, will allow you to be able to get a total of 5% increase to overall max speed. When it comes to a heavy fighter, they are actually going to get plus 25% increase to acceleration in the dive, which is an extra bonus that no other airframe gets, and is definitely going to tip the scales for when you need to try and get out of an area and you're going to trade your altitude in order to get some more zoom out of your airframe. That's another reason you want to do this up and over turn tactic. You're going to slow down on the up portion of it, but when you go back over, you will have gained a decent amount of altitude to allow you to be able to get that speed back. So that's very important. Now, we dove on that one aircraft, and now we're using our speed to be able to get away from that furball. And we're going to try and gain some altitude and attack another opportune target here. Doing an up and over turn again. We are getting chased pretty heavily, and we've already used a repair on our engine, so we're definitely in a bad state, but you can see just by nosing the aircraft over how much speed we're able to gain, and we get up to about 400 miles an hour, which is pretty significant when you're talking about a tier 6 battle. So without an engine, we were able to maintain that 375 pretty easily, and then that engine came back and we just hammered down the boost. I also would like to equip engine cooling on these aircraft. It's the only aircraft that can get the engine cooling. Engine cooling allows you to be able to get 30% of your boost back with the simple click of a button. So that's always a great thing to have on hand. Heavy fighters already get a very strong boost. This airframe gets 25, some get as high as 30 seconds of boost. We're doing the up and over. We're going for a head-on pass on this aircraft. I'm probably not going to kill him, but I just ignore him because I don't want to turn too much when I'm coming in for this next attack run. I do see a GA down here, which is one of our priority targets, so I'm going to make sure that I go after him. Now I do make a critical error here. If this was a bot ground attacker, this would be a perfectly fine attack run to go on. However, it is a player, and players know that you can always angle your guns up when it comes to operating a ground attacker, and he managed to take us out. We did not plan accordingly. We did not have a good escape route. And that's just one more example of why that tactic works so much better when you plan accordingly. We went in there with the intention of doing more of a bombing run rather than a killing run, and we were punished for it. Right now, things are not looking really good. They've got the mining facility and they also have an air base while we only have one. Never get discouraged. Always plan to win. Find the way and then exploit it. I was going into way too many furballs, so I'm going to start isolating individual targets to the best of my ability. I know I'm getting my bombs back here, so I am going to look for a target to be able to drop munitions on. So I'm dropping one bomb here, and I notice there's still a stack left. The cannon should be more than enough to be able to take that out. And then I drop the other bomb, and that manages to be able to flip the capture zone. I normally don't advocate shooting at ground targets with your aircraft, but you can do it when it comes to just taking out a smokestack. It's worth a lot of capture points, so very valuable. This bow fighter, I know I can get into a turning fight with him, and I don't want to turn my back to him because I know he can give chase. So we're going to see if we can turn the advantage on him, but they have two heavy fighters that are both controlled by players, including this aircraft. Now I caused him a bit of damage. It looks like they're not paying attention to me, so I'm going to go ahead and hammer down and get out of this engagement using the 12 seconds of boost I had available. And at well over 400 miles an hour, we're able to get some separation from those aircraft. I see they're not paying attention to me, and I go for a climb in order to get some of that energy back. There's that bow fighter. He's not paying attention. We're using the strong power of that 37mm in order to take out that aircraft. Now, the other heavy fighters that are at tier 6 also have very strong forward firing guns, so they could do exactly the same type of tactic. When it comes to the differences between each heavy line, it varies slightly. Not all aircraft are going to be exactly the same, but for the most part, the Americans tend to be more maneuverable, with the exception of the tier 7 and tier 10 than all the other heavy fighters. While the Germans seem to have better altitude performance and harder hitting guns, and then the Brits still have decent guns, but they operate at a little bit of a lower altitude, at least up until tier 9. They sit below 6,500 feet, and they usually carry a very impressive air-to-ground ordnance. Starting with the bow fighter at tier 5, you carry 2 bombs as well as 8 rockets. The tier 9 actually gets 16 rockets. Yeah, you did not hear me wrong. 16 rockets. So they have the capability to do a little bit more when it comes to a ground attack run here and there. In a lot of ways, the heavy fighter plays a little bit like a multi-role, but he wants to be able to dictate the fight using that speed and altitude, which is something multi-roles really can't do. Now here, I was not intending to ram that aircraft, but it looks like he definitely wanted to ram me, and he managed to take me out of the battle. But we'll come back and we'll get our vengeance if we can. We have air superiority. You saw how easily that game can turn when you're able to get control of the fight and not lose your cool during the battle. Let's go ahead and take a look at the post-game stats, and we'll see how well we actually ended up playing to our role. Now, this wasn't a great battle, but I think it definitely emphasized those types of tactics of maintaining the altitude, doing the up and over turn, getting that airspeed, doing your attack run, not wasting any energy on extraneous turns, and then getting those kills when you can. Use the munitions as they are available, and I think you'll find that you have good results in these aircraft. And then once you start to understand them, you can play a little bit more to your style, and maybe you'll figure out better tactics. But this is what I found to work for me and for the other people I've advised as well. Here you can see that we were gaining capture points, capturing sectors, as well as destroying aerial targets. Those are the 3 priorities for a heavy fighter aircraft, and that managed to put us at the top of the leaderboard for this battle. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you like and what you didn't like, and we'll try to keep making these videos for you in the future. Next up is going to be the multi-role line.